always begin by first maybe just taking a moment. This is really for me, but I think it's helpful for everyone. If you want to place your hands over your heart, maybe close the eyes and just take a few slow, deep breaths, tuning in to your body. Allow any tension to kind of sink away, fall away from the body, feeling into the connection that your body has to the surface beneath it. Inhaling fully in through the nose and sigh it out the mouth. We'll do this 2 more times. Inhale. Sigh it out. 1 more time. Inhaling fully. And sigh it out. Wonderful. We can rest our hands in our lap and we'll get started. So yesterday in the morning Sangha, Tai Kozin mentioned a sutta, Angulimala Sutta, and that was intriguing to me, so I kind of looked into it a bit more, and I'm going to be talking a little bit today about stopping violence within our own hearts, but specifically relate to ourselves. Because I think that we as practitioners are doing likely a wonderful job at continuing to open our hearts to others and grow in our loving kindness and compassion for others. And I wonder, how much we're turning inward also for ourselves. Because those are the kind of the silent places within our mind, and how are we treating ourselves and our bodies. So the Angulimala Sutta, that word Angulimala is finger necklace, and Angulimala was treated quite cruelly and harshly by people, and I'm kind of moving through the first part pretty quickly, but he was treated wrongly, and I think there were some misunderstandings, and he ended up killing so many people to obtain their fingers. And again, I think it was a misunderstanding, but he was under the impression that he needed to collect, I think, 1,000 fingers, and he ended up wearing the fingers around his neck as a necklace. And so everybody was so scared of him because he was this ruthless killer. And the Buddha was going about his alm rounds in the town that Angulimala was in, and the Buddha noticed that a lot of the houses were kind of closed up and not receiving any monks to give food. And so he continues on, and then there's a house that does open their door, and they're like, quickly come inside, Angulimala's here, and we don't want him to kill you, and the Buddha responded by saying, that's not our practice. I'm going out in the community, and I will be okay. And so he starts walking, the streets, and he notices, he can hear, that Angulimala is behind him, kind of far away, I guess, but that he's, he's there. But the Buddha feels okay. He feels confident, he knows his practice. He also knows that he's physically capable, and so he's not scared. And so, but Angulimala, is yelling at him, stop, you know, uh, you know, monk, I want you to stop. And the Buddha continues to kind of walk in a meditative way, away from Angulimala. And this enrages him even more. And he's running after him and saying, I told you to stop. And the Buddha turns and says, Angulimala, I have stopped a long time ago. It is you who has not stopped. And this really, I guess, confused Angulimala because, the Buddha's in physical movement. He's walking. And so Angulimala's, he's confused as to what he means by stopped. And the Buddha continues that he has stopped, the path of violence and destruction and hate, and he has taken the path of compassion and understanding. And so Angulimala, was, I guess, he thought that it has become, he's lost, like he can't regain any sense of peaceful path because of how many lives he's taken and the violence. And the Buddha shared with him that if he really wants to give up the violence and to live a life of compassion, that the Buddha will help him do so. And so he goes with the Buddha, and he turns his life into a life of compassionate peace. And so that was really, I don't know, it resonated with me because it makes me think about, as I said in the beginning, I think that for me, that I have absolutely grown in my capacity to be kind and loving and provide deep listening and space to others. Obviously there's still work to be had, but I've come leaps and bounds, but within my own self and my own attitude about myself, I am softening, but it's not anywhere close to the presence and kindness that I offer to others. And I think that that's true for a lot of us, maybe, it seems to be this attitude that, I'm different, like, yes, of course I want to offer kindness to others, but I don't deserve that kind of kindness, I expect more of myself or something like this. And so there's many different forms of violence that we can take towards ourselves, and that can be emotionally. We may numb our feelings through, I don't know, alcohol or food, or just kind of zoning out or something, taking refuge in social media or television or whatever. And it's a way to not be present for ourselves, to our own feelings. We can be violent mentally towards ourselves in the way that we speak to ourselves, by being, harshly critical, talking down and hatefully to ourselves. And then we can be physically violent to ourselves, where we push our bodies past their limits. Despite realizing that maybe we should stop, we keep going anyway. And then our body becomes depleted and exhausted. And so violence sounds extreme, like the Angulimala, violence where he's killing thousands of people. But it can be that, but it can also take subtler forms. So maybe physically we're not taking a short nap, when it would be in our best interest to do so. I mean, it doesn't have to be extreme to be a form of aggression towards ourselves. And so, part of our practice is to apply compassion to not only others but ourselves. And so it can be, it's incredibly beneficial, if we can start applying that to ourselves, because not only will we feel better, but then the quality of compassion and love that we give to others will be even more beneficial and impactful. And so sometimes, though, we have such a habit of these subtle and not so subtle forms of aggression towards ourselves that we may not even notice that we're doing it. And probably because I'm a yoga teacher, I always tend to bring things back to the body, and the body can be a really good indicator of what's occurring. Not only physically, but mentally and emotionally within ourselves. And so I want to kind of practice a little bit of learning to sense into our innate yes and our innate no, and how that feels in our body. Because, one of the challenges that I've been personally kind of experiencing is finding the line. There's a fine line between kind of challenging yourself and at the same time accepting yourself as you are. That's kind of a fine balance and dance. And because I can't remember the little quote, they shared it in the retreat, something about like you are perfect as you are, and you could use a little more work too, kind of a thing. And so, like, I think that, this idea of aggression, we absolutely do not want to be violent with ourselves. And at the same time, we don't want to swing so far the other way that we're not pushing ourselves a little bit, kind of going outside of our comfort zone. So there's a fine balance, and to me, accessing the wisdom of the body can be helpful at determining what is a healthy challenge versus what is a unhealthy intensity, like trauma that you're causing to yourself. So with this practice, I don't want to instill negative, even more negative self-critical talk to ourselves. And so I'm going to use an example that's more kind of visual, like a visualization instead of a physical kind of experience. So I've given this example before, but I think it's appropriate. So it's kind of the difference between you're at a family gathering and you come upon your grandpa, and he like puts his hands like really harshly on your shoulders, and he's like, "Hey, how you doing?" How did your body feel, in response to that? And I want to walk us through it, and then, as opposed to your grandmother coming up to you and gently, kind of tenderly touching your arm or placing her hand on your shoulder and saying, "Oh, it's so good to see you." It's our body responds differently to those two things. And though the intention for both is the same, likely that they're excited to see you, they're happy you're here, it has a different experience in your body. And so I think the same can be true where I think a lot of people, and certainly myself, and I can only speak to myself, but I believe, that if I'm hard on myself, then I'm doing myself good because, I'm going to push myself, damn it, and, this is for the betterment of myself. But so the intention is there, but the application of it maybe is not as skillful, and it's creating more tension and tightness, that's ultimately doing more harm maybe than good. So yeah, let's just kind of close our eyes and maybe visualize that experience. So first, of like a family member coming up behind you unexpectedly, gripping your shoulders, okay? And then notice how your body maybe responds to that. And so notice if there's any tension that is occurring in the body as you visualize this. Maybe the shoulders are kind of tightening and raising in response. Maybe the abdomen is getting a bit tighter. Maybe the breath becomes kind of caught. Maybe the face gets tight. Everybody's physical responses are different. So noticing how this shows up in your body. And then bring to mind a loving family member who's very gentle with you. And though, again, it may be unexpected, but they come up and they place gently their hand upon your shoulder or your arm and tenderly ask, oh, it's so wonderful to see you. How have you been? And so notice how your body's responding to this. Maybe there's a letting down, like a release, kind of a warmth building maybe within the body. Maybe there's an openness or an easefulness. Maybe there's a sigh of relief. Release of any tension. And then you can come back to this moment, and I just want to end with that. Those experiences that you had, I think can be maybe a good indicator. Those again are more kind of extreme examples to kind of facilitate a stronger response in the body. And some of these instances will create more subtle sensations than that. But that can be kind of stay with you as your innate body wisdom of no and yes. And, I invite you as you continue through your day and week to notice any subtle sensations or not so subtle sensations of the body, and then apply it, kind of inquire about it and be, is this sensation trying to communicate something to me? Is it sending me a message? And is this, because I also do want to say that, because our habitual patterns are so ingrained, our body, even if it and that's why it's a fine balance, because, our body may respond as if this is a danger. Like, for example, with this talk, I still, even though I'm learning and growing, I still feel scared. And so my body is responding that way, with a fast heart rate and, tension. But I don't know, there's some aspect though that knows that it's okay. This is for my ultimate good, and I'm learning to soften and calm myself in the process of it. So there is because we're trying to kind of push past kind of these habitual kind of reactions and tendencies, there will be some discomfort. But learning kind of, I guess, what's workable and what's not, maybe is the goal here. But learning more about the signals of your body, and being present to what the body is communicating with us. I think it can be helpful for our path towards compassion and understanding of ourselves. All right, so that is my talk. Thank you.